Excellent. Well, you know what, Christine? I think
Yeah,
people are going to
it's
join us as we
flowing.
go. We got
Yeah.
about somewhere in the range of 40 people here. This is interesting. The number of registrations varies based on the type of topic.
Yep.
And understandably, when you have a topic that's a little more philosophical, like how do we embrace change, um, it doesn't tend to drive this sense of immediacy. We're going to talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Why change management doesn't get the same kind of attention that you get when you're talking about retention
Yeah.
or renewals or lapsed members or promoting a particular event, right? Like it's a longer play. So hello everyone. In case and I don't thank you so much. Keep coming with if you haven't already when you join, tell us who you are and what you do there. That'll give us some perspective for who it is we're talking to. Um, I'm Dave Will. I'm the co-founder and CEO of PropFuel. PropFuel, if I see a lot of our clients out there. Oh, hey, Brittany. I see all kinds of friends joining the call. And so PropFuel is a communication system designed to listen. That's the emphasis behind where we hang our hat. You know, a lot of systems are designed to tell people things, and PropFuel is designed to listen. So we think of this as an insight system that in many cases, in the right circumstance, does a better job of engaging. Now, I'm not planning on promoting PropFuel any more than that today. So I will say one more thing. It comes in, everything starts with a question. We have a process of ask, capture, act. Ask a question, capture insight, and take action. I'm sure many of you have seen me pitch this conversational engagement methodology. We're also offering a conversational engagement toolkit. Mac, maybe you can put that in chat now, but we'll throw that in there at the end as well. If you like downloading that, that'll tell you everything you want to know about conversational engagement. Now, Christine Saunders, my new friend this year. I didn't know Christine a year ago, but I got to know Christine in Chicago at an event. And in my conversation with Christine, we were talking about change and like being one of the biggest hurdles to overcome as an innovative software company. You know, like how do you embrace change? How do you get the mobilizers in an organization, which I'm assuming all of you are probably in many cases mobilizers in your organization, bringing change to the table. How do we help you bring change to people that are a little more resistant to it? And so with that, Christine says, "Oh, we do that a lot. We
Yeah.
deal with that a lot." So Christine runs an organization called Halmyre. It's a marketing consulting firm. Christine, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Halmyre.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. I'm really, really, really happy to be here. I've got my cat Tiny on my lap, and so if I jerk
Let's see
suddenly,
Tiny. Can Tiny come up into the screen for a minute?
well,
Tiny's
she
a
just bit me as a
beautiful
result, but
animal.
there you go. She's kind of looking for her food. Hi, everybody. There's my cat
Oh,
Tony.
beautiful cat.
But back to more serious business. Yeah, Dave, it's an important topic to us. We're consultants who help organizations grow and evolve. We have a saying that if you're standing still, you're actually getting smaller because the world around you is shape shifting and growing and evolving. And when we work with associations, that concept of growth is you cannot separate it from the concept of change. So in our practice, we help our clients get more revenue, more time and attention from their members. That's called engagement, more brand reputation, more reach, depending on what their strategy is looking for. But you can't get more by doing the same thing. Often that's bundled together. Often that's bundled together with sometimes technology, and very frequently in today's day and age, there is technology at play underneath some of those solutions. But there is no way to grow without change, and that requires change from the staff of the organizations that we work with, and it requires change from your members sometimes. And so that's why when you said when you and I met in Chicago last fall and we had our little spin at the trade show booth, that's when I said, oh yeah, we deal with that all the time because you can't grow without change, period. So that's what we do. We help our organizations grow and therefore change.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on something really interesting, which is, I mean, this is why it's kind of this philosophical topic. By the way, if you don't haven't been to one of our fireside chats, there are no slides. There might be one or two. I might pull something up here and there, but this is not a presentation. This is a discussion. I would very, very much like for you to participate in it, ask questions. Yes, the recording will be available. But please feel free to offer opinions, challenge us, ask questions. I would love it if you want to put in here a very specific scenario that where you're dealing with challenges as it relates to change. Put it in, man. I would love to talk about your change challenges over the challenges that we're bringing to the table as examples. I want to tell you that I started my career in software many years ago in the 90s. I was working for a systems integration company. We implemented Siebel and SAP stuff, big enterprise systems outside of the association space. And I remember talking to a guy who ran the change management piece for this systems integration. And it was really funny because this is the person in the organization that had high EQ. Like he was the one that people liked. He kind of was more gregarious. He's the one you wanted to have lunch with. Whereas everybody else was like so like, kind of data focused, database people focused on getting stuff done. And lunch wasn't even something on their calendar. So he told me once though that change management is the first thing to go from
Big time.
budgets. Because
Yeah.
I think what happens is you focus on getting the system
The
in.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you focus on getting the stuff. And you're like, you know what? People are going to use it.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunately, that's just not the case. I don't have any stats about it
Yeah.
around it, but it's shockingly high percentage of implementations of projects fail because we don't take the human piece of it into account.
Yeah, I mean, I can just rhyme off, from technology point of view, but when we help clients evolve their value proposition, just not investing in the pieces required to make sure that the concepts, even in conceptual work, that they stick and that they're well absorbed and understood by staff and then into market by members. So I can give two quick examples. So you do all the research, you do all your value prop strategy, and then as consultants, we're like, here's your report. And because budgets are always a talking point, some of the ideas that we have to sort of push the longevity and say, it's not just about the report and here it is, it's here on paper, now go do it. The next phase of work to really entrench that, help everyone understand it, live it, breathe it, and be able to mobilize on that is often, it's not viewed as part of the standard project, so it gets cut. And similarly, hey, here's a new visual brand identity, here's your new logo, here's your new this, here's your new that, and it's like, ta-da, here you go. And even the time it takes in market for people to understand what it means and to understand that that's you, all of that needs to be considered in my practice anyway, upfront, as part of it's like a total cost of ownership, but it's too often cut out or shortchanged because people want the thing, they don't want the thing to work. It's not that they don't want that, but it's a harder concept to tie together. And there's a high risk. I share it with you, your view, or the view of that colleague of yours with high EQ. There's a high chance of really wasting money and not getting the payback you're looking for. It's a little bit like penny wise, pound foolish. But I understand why it's tough, because budgets are a talking point, right? You need to get concepts past boards and budget oversight committees, and those are harder concepts for people to wrap their heads around the value of that, Dave. And even if something is, I'm going to say, as simple and straightforward as your software, where it can be easily deployed, things can really get gummed up in the handoff internally from the person who bought it to the team who needs to use it. And then it becomes kind of a waste of money. And that we see that too often. And I think that to me is the criminal part, really frustrating part. It goes against my grain.
But you just nailed the crux of why I wanted to do this webinar, because it's for selfish reasons. I mean, it's
Yeah.
because when I think about change, I think about, here we are PropFuel adding another item to your budget. We're adding another line item to your things to do, and
Yep.
another line item of your technology to manage, right? That's not a great sell. The output, of course, is change. The
Yep.
output is a different result. And you said this earlier on, if you want to make change, if you want to impact your engagement, if you want to impact your renewal rates, if you want to impact your acquisition, something different needs to
Has
happen.
to
And
happen,
oftentimes
period.
it's not this incremental shift in the subject line or how you're communicating with people. It's not hiring a firm to pick up. I might be hiring a firm to pick up phone calls, but it's usually a more radical thing. And the more radical the shift, the more difficult it is to get people to embrace. So we run into
Well,
scenarios oftentimes where either the executive director or leadership buys into conversational engagement, or it's the other way around. Membership or marketing buys into conversational engagement, but their comrades over in another silo, whether it's marketing or membership or maybe IT, don't buy into it, and there's resistance, right? Or sometimes people leave and another person comes in and there's resistance, right? So what we're talking about is not necessarily just change, but resistance to
yeah.
change.
Well, we call it, it's almost by virtue, and our firm only works with associations, so I get to say this with a tremendous amount of love in my heart. And I say it to anyone, so some of you out there may have heard me say it before, but last year itis is both a functional tool, and I understand how it lives in associations, but it's death to what we're talking about.
What'd you say last year, itis? What does
We
that mean?
call it last year itis, which is we did it last year. I've done it like this. I know what I'm doing. It's good. It works. That
It's
also,
easy. It's
it's
easy, right?
easy, or I figured it out, so it's become easy. It's like muscle, the mental muscle memory. And then that's compounded with a different type of last year itis, which is I know what our members sound like because I talk to them all the time. And I come from a marketing background, and a marketer is like, one-to-one feedback is really important, even in trade associations when you have a small number of clients. But you probably actually don't know what they sound like or what they're thinking, because it's very, very difficult to get to in a day-to-day conversation. But associations sort of can be tripped up because they get into like a bit of a bubble with their members, and they hear the same members all the time, or a certain type of member who shows up, so they think they know what they sound like. And I don't want to discount the value of that, but it can really trap and calcify some thinking, saying, actually, your members' wants and needs have changed, because they're always changing, because the public is changing, society's changing, politics are changing, the economy is changing, technology is changing, but it's always changing. And it's hard work to keep your finger on the pulse. And that's what sort of the marketing mindset does. But it's, yeah, I see it in the line. It's like, oh, but I've tried that already. Well, the right idea at the right time is the right idea. So, and so it's that. So those are two sort of structural elements that can be very hard to shake in an association. And it prevents all sorts of, and it's not blameworthy. It's just something to be aware of, that it stops people from saying, oh yeah, I've been doing it like this and thinking like this because it makes sense and I've been told it's okay, but hey, maybe the rules of the game have changed and now I have to, what's the change management book, Who Moved My Cheese? Now I have to go and, maybe take a little pivot. Being open to that is harder work, right? Being open to trying your new technology is harder work, but that's where growth comes, period.
We call that mind space. Maybe, I mean, everybody calls it that, I guess, but you need to create room in your head to
Yeah.
embrace change, right? And that's
Yeah.
difficult to do. Let's jump into, so we have three topics
Yeah.
that Christine and I cornered that we'd like to talk about. To be honest, I'd much prefer ditch one of ours and talk about yours. So if you
Me
have
too.
something that in your organization that you've been trying to make change on, trying to impact, if it could be as specific as a AMS implementation or implementing PropFuel, maybe it has to do with bringing conversational engagement into the mix. There's something that where you're the change agent and you're struggling with it. Tell us a little bit about that. I would love to hear what you have to say. One area, now let's get into this first conversation around value proposition, Christine. When we started this conversation, you used this example of value proposition as like, this is where so many organizations get tripped up because they know they're having a problem with their value perception or their value proposition. Talk to me a little bit about what you've seen there in the clients you've
Yeah,
worked.
so it can be, and I think it goes back to that sort of, I know what, and there's a real risk from a strategic point of view to think, I know what the members I speak to like. So therefore this is valuable to everyone. And that can be even in a small, tight environment, like a trade association where you're speaking to the check writer, but there's dozens of other people involved. Really understanding that at a more systematized and managerial level is really important, because when I said your market, your members, what they want and need is changing all the time, it means their perception of your value is changing all the time. And, for the marketers out there who've got a little heart for the profession, perception is everything. It doesn't even matter if it's real, perception is everything. And if they perceive that you're not staying up to date with them and changing and rolling with them, then signs of this to us when we start working strategically is we see declining, higher churn rates, greater pressure on your membership dues, a type of disengagement because there's a value perception. So the impetus to change, I see a question in here just about maybe my team is done with change. I've got bad news. Like I've got really
I
bad news.
didn't know how to answer that. So the question
Yeah,
here, let me just somebody
yeah.
said Bonifer says one of the challenges I've had is that staff have
Uh-oh.
um
Oh, there
right
you
when
go.
there you are. Thank God, because I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah, hey Bonifer, the sort of bad news. Like I think it's about pacing it, but the reward system that has to come. So this is when we work with our clients. The reward system, I find the deep motivation of staff at associations is typically assigned to, they really want to do a good job for their members. I mean, it's one of the interesting characteristics of staff at associations is that in general, they really do care about the success of your members. So the motivation to me is putting those success metrics in front of them and saying, look, you made that change. Look how much more successful your members have become. And so having that in place, I find is a bit of a reward metric. It could be, I don't know the degree to which you've been talking about change, but ultimately, when we do strategies, it's like, well, you are motivated, your staffs are motivated that way. And so motivating them through change by the success of your members is key. That could be oversimplistic for your situation. But the bad news is you can't stop changing. Like last yearitis is the death to resiliency in our view when we do strategic consulting for clients. So you need those constant feedback loops. Dave, you talk about it with your tool, and it's one of the reasons we love your tool is because it does provide that an immediacy of collection of insights so that you can take action and respond. That does take a certain type of work and it's a new type of skill,
Yeah.
but it actually should also be very satisfying when an association is truly aligned and member-centric. And that sounds like, of course, my organization is member-centric. Well, Dave, you launched into a couple of, a few minutes ago, you sort of said, well, we can have the bigger associations that have silos and they're kind of having power battles about who's responsible for which bit and who's going to get the most budgets. And well, that's not very member centric, but that happens. So just watching different situations emerge so that you can truly stay member centric, to me is one of the keys. So Bonifar, I don't know if any of that helps or if there's a like little gem in there for you.
I
But
would actually, you gave me a chance, and as I
yeah.
was listening, ideas were starting to flow. I'm a big believer in creating a culture that drives the behavior that you're looking for in your organization. And so, and I'm also a believer in core values,
Mhm.
and I'm also a believer in actually using your core values to make decisions and drive action, right?
Mhm.
Core values up on the wall mean nothing, but core values in conversation and dialogue with your team mean a lot. So for us, one of them is forward motion. We just changed to that. It's okay to change your core values every now and then. And what comes hand in hand with this is this concept of experimentation. So our team knows that we're going to try a lot of different things, and
Yeah.
many of them are going to fail. And sometimes we're going to go in this direction, then we're going to shift in this direction. So change, now it's easy for a software company to say, right? But change is a part of who we are, and we create that culture. We talk about it, we celebrate it. And that's always with the idea of a steady vision in mind. So what we're doing is changing tactics, changing the how we're getting from point A to point B. But point A and point B are pretty steady. Where that's the part that ideally we're trying not to change.
It's interesting you say that. I'll just build on it. You and I, and just so anyone's listening to this, Dave and I didn't prep this part of the discussion, so bear with us here. But Dave, I'll respond by saying, for sure, it's kind of a bee in my bonnet. Anyone's been following me on social lately. I've been hammering and yammering away about a couple of things that I find inherent in association strategies. I've been doing this for over a decade now, and too many strategies actually sound like an operational plan. So I'm going to bridge into where you are now. So I've been yammering on that topic for a bit on social and helping people see a true vision. And what I love about associations is that you can actually have a true long-term vision for the profession or the industry that you're representing. And when it's clearly articulated, the value should come in under that. What happens though, it gets a little cloudy because this is a bee in my bonnet. A lot of strategies sound the same, like you can put your thumb over the name of the organization and it starts to sound the same. The same is true, and this is what you were talking about, the same is true of the values. So a lot of the values are about how the organization wants to set the tone for its profession, not for the organization itself in terms of getting there and staying resilient. And so that's your observation.
That's a great point.
Well, it's your point. I'm just picking it out, putting it in my words.
No, you said it better.
I hadn't thought of it in those terms before, but it sort of dovetails into that observation where I see it's hard to make change when you're not actually seeing beyond in your strategy. And I find too many organizational strategies are very short term and they're really effectively an operational plan and like tell me what to do in the next 3 years, as opposed to where am I trying to drive to, which is ultimately for an association. Let me save you a bunch of consulting dollars, everyone. Ultimately, it sounds something like association, my members' success. It's some version of that. I want them to be more successful, better. But the values and the operational organization of associations aren't tooled to do that fast fail concept that you just talked about, which is try a lot. That fast failure is a necessary tool on the way to long-term success.
Christine, I'd like you to think about this question while I go back to another one. So here's the
Sure.
question I want you to think about. So what are some examples of excellent organizational strategies? I don't even understand the question, but hopefully you do. The one I want to go back to though is, can you talk a little bit about change management versus moving the goalpost on people? Look, I think change can happen at a lot of different layers in an organization.
Yeah.
Change could be something as simple as getting a new computer, right? So I'm getting a new computer today. That requires some adjustment, change of mentality. Doesn't
Yeah.
really impact any goalposts or anything. But then we have change like maybe closer to value proposition kind of stuff where or maybe what it is we stand for as an organization, which is way off on the other side of the spectrum.
Right.
And then there's everything in between. So sometimes you are moving the goalposts, but I would argue that what's more important than leaving goalposts steady is figuring out where are we focused right now. So now what we're talking about, Bonifer, is we're talking about a strategic plan. Now
Mhm.
we use this, everybody has a different strategic planning methodology. Our methodologies, we look out 3 years, we paint a picture,
Yeah.
and we try to make it as crystal clear as possible. Totally open to changing that, by the way.
Mhm.
Then we create a 1 year picture, 1 year vision of what it is we want to accomplish this year. We use OKR process, objectives and key results. So an objective is a little fluffier, kind of like, hey, let's improve improve our client success model to increase retention and value for our customers or something like that. So, but then the key results would be very, very specific numbers to make sure that we did that. Okay, so that's our annual vision. To change an annual vision, you better have a really good reason. Like for the most part, once you set an annual goal, that's a goalpost that we don't want to move
Yep.
unless there's a really good reason. So
Mhm.
again, so there's kind of my line in the sand. Once we set our annual plan, that's where we're going. Then we break
Yep.
that down into quarters. Now, one reason why we might change our goalpost at the end of the year is if we had a exceptionally good quarter or an exceptionally bad quarter, from any perspective. Usually I think about sales when I think about that. So if we had a bad quarter, again, I'm coming at this from a software company's perspective. If we had a quarter where we didn't hit the number we wanted to hit, well, we might make some adjustments in our annual goal. But so, I mean, this is very foo-foo and all over the place, but to me, that's how I think about
Right.
change and goalposts.
Yeah. I mean, you get the structure you talked about. So you're in my books, there's two things at work, and let's pull it apart a little bit. Uh, your strategy should be long lasting and they should exceed a 3-year plan. Okay, so that's what's become shortchanged, and that's kind of the small rants I've been on social media lately, is that strategies are collapsing into that 3 year sort of space that you just talked about, which is
You think
actually,
that's too short?
well, it's not too short. It's not too short for planning. There's a
Yeah, yeah.
difference. It's not too short for planning. I think it is too short for strategies because you can't really affect serious change in that period of time, especially around associations. And this is all things being equal. You know, other things could be going on. You might be dealing with a big merger, a new big opportunity. Like there could be other things, but all things being equal, these are generalisms. So what I would say is what I like are strategies that do have the potential to last for 20 years. They don't have to keep it for 20 years. I haven't been around that long to see any live, but I want that vision, and that this is where we're going, simply for associations, because that's how long it takes to make real, lasting, impactful change on most of the topics that you're talking about. You know, anyone who's out there doing advocacy isn't trying to go, you know, maybe you're in a moment of advocacy wins. A lot of people were in COVID, an advocacy win for the next year, but really what you're trying to do is influence an agenda for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And that is a long-term prospect. So you really have to, you know, the question we've been asking, we're doing a value prop strategy for a client right now. And the question we're asking their board just in the interviews, just to try to shift their thinking, is when you retire and the new graduates, this is a professional association, new graduates are joining and who in 20 years are going to be on your chair in the board, what do you want that to be? What do you want the issue of the day to be?
Hmm.
And so it's shifting the thinking so that they can see beyond. So for associations especially, I want long-term strategic thinking. I want measures along the way. Then what you were talking about, this planning, I do personally, and I have this for my own business, I have a 10-year plan.
So which I call a big, hairy, audacious goal, a
That's
beehive.
right.
Yeah.
You're aiming for that big thing. That's going to change because life's going to change. You're going to review that annually or biannually, maybe, because that sort of shifts. It shouldn't change radically, but it should shift as more information is gathered. And then yes, the 3 year, and then, as you say, the 1 year, and then down to quarters. So I for my own business, I have very similar types of thinking. And so that sort of anchors the where you're heading, and that measurement cycle that I was talking about to Bonifer's question, which is, maybe where's the reward cycle? So you should be able to see a difference, and many, many, many of the metrics have to be centered around, because I just generally see this, and I think it's why I love associations. It's because staff care so much about, they really genuinely across the board want members to be successful. So how do we get the metrics around that? That is hard. It's kind of scary, but once you do that, it's very actually deep brand motivating, and it's not necessarily an easy resolve to some, staff getting worn out, but there's no real alternative. You can't just rest because your members I'm sorry, are changing every single day. Amazon is changing what they're doing. Microsoft and Facebook is changing what they're doing. The politics of the day are changing. The economy is changing. The price of oil, we're in World War III. All of this stuff is changing all the time and is impacting your members, and you got to keep up with them. But Dave, that's no different than you and I as private for-profit businesses trying to keep up with where our customers are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And stay that. So,
I just had an interesting conversation with my team, and we've got a team of client success people, Megan, Ashley, Melissa. We just hired Kathleen. I see a lot of our clients in this list today, so you probably know one or multiple of them. And so we have this conversation on a fairly regular basis, which is we have this conversation of like if the efficiency of our team, and how can we manage more people under one client success person, right? Like how do we get more clients and service them well under one client success manager? And then now we're kind of swinging our focus to how do we manage clients more effectively? Totally different issues, efficiency and effectiveness. Totally different issues. So like those are goalposts that I'm changing on the team now. I'm saying, okay, let's not worry about efficiency right now. Let's focus on effectiveness.
I'll jump in on that one. Heather, I see you're asking, what are some examples? I don't know if I'll get to sort of examples of good strategies. One, I think they have to see beyond the 3-year plan. They have to be focused on member success. And so those are some generalisms. But now let me come to what Dave is just talking about is the measures of that, and what we do when we when we do our work. There's almost always two counterbalancing, and I have this in my own business's scorecard, and we do it for our clients. We put in two counterbalancing objectives. You can't, the two we have are client satisfaction and profitability. So easy to be profitable and have a
No, those are the same things, right? Efficiency and effectiveness.
Exactly.
That's exactly the same things.
It's exactly the same thing. So you need, it's easy to have one without the other. I could have really happy clients and no profitability. I could give it all away, no problem, not good for my business. Or I could really screw my clients and have a bunch of really unhappy clients, not what we want for longevity. So it's about making sure you've got that counterbalance that you talked about, Dave. And I'm just going to it made me think of a TED Talk a colleague here, Thomas Oakes, sent to me yesterday. It's a TED Talk, and is talking about using lessons from biology about really effective systems and how you map that to a company you want to be around for the next 100 years. Anyways, it's interesting. He talks about how, the immune system is the least efficient, but the most effective system on the planet, on the human body, and then draw some business lessons from that. And it's around some of these ideas. So I've just put that in the chat. I just watched it this morning. I thought it was really helpful and might be illuminating to this conversation. So it's in the chat for everyone.
I was just going to look for that to throw it in the chat. You beat me to it. So Christine, listen, I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and there's some topics that I really want to get to. One of them is the structures that get in the way oftentimes in our organizations. Top-down change, that you have the CEO and a board-led decisions. We also have silos. I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Before we do, I'm still not satisfied with our audience participation here. I want to understand, if you could, and if you're, and I'll be very specific, if you are a PropFuel customer, I would very much like to know, um, was this a change that was difficult to embrace, and why? And are you still challenged in embracing this change of bringing conversational engagement into your communication approach? So that's one for the PropFuel customer. You're not a PropFuel customer. I'd like to know, what is your organization going through right now that is requiring a perspective of change?
The cognitive load.
Yeah, could be focus on a strategic plan, value proposition, an AMS, a new system, losing staff, changing staff. All right, so with that, can we talk a little bit about, you and I talked, sometimes there's scenarios where an organization, and again, I come at this through my goggles of PropFuel. So I may spark the conversation around my experiences with associations, but it applies to a lot of different scenarios. So somebody buys PropFuel. Sometimes it's bought at the membership or marketing level. Sometimes it's bought at the board and CEO level. And when an executive director or CEO buys something and then kind of throws at people, here, use this, it's not always welcome because it's not easy. I'm so used to doing things this way, and now you want me to do it this way. So there's one challenge. Talk to me a little bit about how does an organization handle that kind of challenge to the change dynamic?
So when decisions are made, I'm just going to frame it up so people can think about it. I'm not sure there's a silver bullet here, but you're talking about bottom up or top down answers and change driven, right?
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah. And I think it depends a little bit on the culture of the organization, for sure. So just coming from the top down, there is board led, CEO led, and then down a chain, depending on how big your organization is. Board-led change, I think, is amongst the most interesting. Board-led change usually manifests itself as a change in CEO, and I think that when it's a high-functioning board, that's the best thing for it to do. It really only has one employee, but other board-led change can sort of gets our attention sometimes because it's maybe not always connected into strategy. But the top-down, we see, and see examples, and it's specific to, I mean, I've seen this, we work in and around your software. A lot of our clients, we recommend your software quite a bit, Dave. We see clients who would benefit from it so much, but just a middle management team just can't make the cognitive effort to think about doing a membership renewal or a membership onboarding a little differently. And it is gumming it up. And it's just sort of that first example I talked about. It really frustrates us because we know the impact it will have. The person who bought it knows the impact it's going to have. So, but there's a failure there from the top of change management of either aligning their objectives against the use of the technology. We all hope, don't we, that staff will just get it and be those unicorns that are going to pick it up and run with it. I hope many times for all my staff who are on the call, I wish my staff were like that too, but it's not the way it goes. So when you have something new and you've decided strategically that a new piece of technology is important, don't shortchange it and just assume everyone's going to get as excited and see the possibility and be as motivated by the possibility at a 20,000 foot distance as you are. You need to put the work into doing a bunch of things. And to me, one of the goals is align it to their performance scorecard. This is a little outside my lane, but the proverbial SMART objective, help them understand very, very, very specifically what they are to achieve with this. And I'm going to say, I mean, I'm quite sure your client success team would be very willing to help people articulate what the type of results they might want to expect. So to help, so not only change management, but align it to their performance scorecard is often a step that's missed. It's just kind of sent over and saying, here's this technology, please use it, and hope that it'll spontaneously happen. And it doesn't, and that's not realistic. It's not realistic for anyone. Dave, how am I doing here? Did talk about one situation?
Yeah, I think that was the top down
That's top down, yeah.
issue where it's like at the end of the day, sometimes the only thing that's going to drive somebody to embrace change is what they're incented to do, right? My partner Cameron likes to say we want to encourage a certain behavior. I forgot the exact quote. He says it way better than me, but basically behaviors are driven by incentives. Um,
And
Janet
the
said,
incentives don't always have to be like, people often leap to, oh, the financial, or they get to keep their job. I mean, those are extreme, but there are other incentives. And don't forget, and I've said it a number of times, I do think a lot of your staffs are genuinely motivated by the incentive of being more helpful to your members. Like, they are caring, service-oriented people as a class, people who work in associations. So I think illuminating that and saying, you're going to do that better, but making it specific and measurable, I think is really, really, really helpful.
that's a really good point about incentives. Like there's intrinsic and extrinsic
100%.
motivations. And I remember a conversation with a client. This was very flattering. She said one of the things she was grateful for is PropFuel made her look good. And
Yeah.
like actually gave her
Yep.
credibility in her organization for having brought something
Of value.
significant to the table.
Yep.
And it was just awesome. I mean, it really, and I mean this sincerely, it drove her to the point of near tears, expressing how impactful it was for her to feel strong in her role. Talk
Yeah.
about intrinsic motivation. That is
Yeah.
just awesome. So sometimes just acknowledgement for doing something well is enough.
It's you can apply those concepts to changing behavior amongst your members as well. Too many associations, I think that the value prop must be tied to extrinsic. Oh, I pay you $100 a year, I get $150 back in insurance discounts. People that, I'm a marketer, I'm all about the feels. The most powerful and the longest lasting motivators that you can tap into with your members and your staff are intrinsic ones. Those are the staying power, the feels, so to speak. So
Janet said something here that I want to comment on that I think is great. I think she was responding to my question, like for clients, if you implemented PropFuel, did you experience any challenges with change? And Janet says, no, we assigned an owner and she has done a great job. By the way, owners are really, really important
that's an
in
intrinsic concept, eh? Ownership. Good.
ah, yes, but it's yes, I guess so. That's interesting.
Well, you can assign one on a org chart and say, Dave is Ting, Dave, you own this, away you go. But if Dave hasn't bought into that, so don't forget, like, there's got to be a buy-in to that. Oh yeah, I own this, I know why.
Now, just to be clear, ownership doesn't mean you're necessarily doing it. You're just
No,
responsible
no,
for
accountable.
its success, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's what I love about ownership. I remind people that about my team all the time. It's like, and there really should be one owner to things, one owner, and they're responsible bringing people together. So sometimes it might involve IT or membership or marketing. That's okay. One owner to lead the team. But she also said, we also started with targeted goals and targeted audiences. So
I love
that
it. That's
sounds
real.
like clarity
Yeah.
in definition of what success looks like. Really
Also
cool. Thanks,
sounds like a
Janet.
bit of a test and learn mindset, which is a great entry point into whenever you can do something like that for change, to give people toe in the water and come back to toe in the water. It builds their confidence through it. It is a different value and a different approach and a cultural approach of that. It lives alongside of fail fast, but anything where we can do a little bit and see success and do a little bit more, or see learnings and apply them to keep going. I love that type of idea. And it sounds like some of that's in there, Janet. That's good.
I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the ad car philosophy, the change management philosophy. I know it's not, it doesn't belong to Halmyre. It's an industry thing.
Yep.
But this came up in our conversation. We talked about an organization, not an individual, but an organization just not being ready for change. Um, I think I have my notes here. This is something you must have said. People embrace change. And I'm sorry, people embrace pain and become addicted to it, which
Well,
I
that
think
doesn't sound like something I'd say, but I don't know if they embrace pain and become addicted to it, but the ad
maybe
carving,
I said that. That's
yeah, maybe you
awesome.
did. I don't know. I
So
don't. Hey,
let's
all my prospective clients out there, that's not how we roll. No, I'm kidding.
let's talk about though when somebody comes to the table, oftentimes like new leadership comes into the picture, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm thinking about my friend now, Todd Hopty. He's
yeah, yeah.
the new, Todd?
No, I
He,
don't, but I'm
he
going
is
off.
I'm a fanboy now of Todd. Todd is the executive director of, or CEO, I'm not sure which, of AAE, American Association of Airport Executives. And he came in, I want to say it was like 10 years ago. I think they were about 30 million in revenue. It's a pretty big organization. And he came in and said, look, we went to the board in his application process. He already worked there for a number of years beforehand, but he still had to apply for this job. And he said, look, I want to take us to 100 million in 10 years. And they laughed. They said, that's cute. Nice. You don't have to do that. You're still gonna get the job, Todd.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
took them to 100 million in 5 years, and
yeah,
now they're at 130 million. So this is a person that came in and wanted big change fast.
yeah.
Now, he was successful at doing it, but some organizations might not be successful or ready for change. So, and this is where ADKAR, ADKAR comes
Yeah.
into the picture, right?
So and I'll get a link while I'm talking if I can, or before we're done, and I'll put one in. You can look it up, ADKAR, awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and repeatability or repetition. And I may have gotten one of those last two letters, because I'm going to tell you, if your change is coming top down, even it applies if you're bottom up selling something and trying to sell against some siloed areas. The awareness desire phase are skipped, because that change agent, and take that previous scenario we talked about where we've got a client and they in fact bought your software, Dave, and they said, here you go, and it's so intuitive to them and it makes so much sense. They're skipped understanding the awareness desire part. And I think underscoring and making that connection to Janet's comment about the ownership, and where I blurted out, I'm like, that's a state of mind. It's not just a role on a racy chart, like an accountability chart. It's got to be a state of mind as well. They've got to have both the awareness and desire to do that. But that awareness, desire change goes to your board, it goes to your membership. And so it all sort of depends on where the change is being authored from and what the motivations of those audiences are. Some of you, I've got clients there, you have a board, maybe they're extremely risk averse and prefer sort of status quo. Boards aren't hugely motivated to risk. Now, interesting example you brought there about what a huge, change in growth for that one organization. Clearly, I can tell you just from the outside, their board must be motivated, are very risk capable, not risk averse, leaders to allow and embrace and encourage and foster that to happen. So really understanding the risk profiles, really understanding the intrinsic motivations of everyone you need to rally around it. And so the ADKAR model, I think, is extremely helpful. Don't shortchange it. Some organizations need to stay for 2 years in the AD side of things. And sometimes you go AD into knowledge and then you start applying it. And sometimes you have to come back. And again, that's that test and learn to say, it's okay up there. See, and then you come back. See, it was okay up there. Let's keep going forward. So it's never a straight line as well. Charting your own course, depending on whether you're moving your members or your staff or a board and trying to bring them along with you. It's a great sort of framework for anyone thinking about where are you at any given stage. And in our experience, don't be afraid that it's not a linear one way exercise. Sometimes you are going forward and coming back a little bit, helping people see what the future looks like bring them back to safety, and then let them go forward again and feel that sense of agency to change their intrinsic success metrics of it. And those are, again, I know them, I'm the marketer here, but it's the feels. So I love that model, and I share it with anyone. Thanks, Christine James, for putting that in there. It's a great one for everyone to consider.
All right, listen, I want to be respectful to people's times. It's always nice to have a couple minutes between meetings. It's 52 minutes after the hour. Christine, this was probably the most broad discussion kind of topic I've ever done in a fireside chat, but I really enjoyed it. I think the topic is super important to help us all become agents of change. I like that phrase, agents of
Yeah.
change. How do we help drive change as opposed to kind of being that department of no?
Yeah.
We all have those departments in our organizations, the department of no, and I much prefer to be there to help embrace change for the better.
Or to, yes, be the department of, not be the department of no, but as we talked about, do change fully. Don't just buy a solution to change or get that piece of research or get that technology. Make sure you bring people along through that ad car. Make sure you bring them along fully through the process in order to pay off even what seems like a simple change of behavior. Pay it off. Bonifer, maybe all the way back to your first question, maybe that's what's going on. Maybe when they're saying there's too much change, it's because the first set of change hasn't sunk in just yet, and they're not fully bought in before you're asking them to take on the next thing. That could be another thing that's going on. So otherwise, you really risk wasting money and burning people. There you go. Thanks, Bonifer. I was looking for I appreciate it. Hopefully that helped. It's make sure that it resonates with people. Otherwise, those efforts that you're driving at, as a senior team or a leader can be a big waste. And I hate that. That's a big part of our practice. I don't like people wasting money. And there you go. So
do you want to, Christine, do you want to put your email address in there? I put in there two links. One is a Halmyre link to findings of Halmyre's 2022 nonprofit value proposition survey, and then an engagement toolkit, which has all kinds of cool resources around conversation.
Yeah, hit me on LinkedIn. I put my email. Jump in anytime. I'm always available for a free consult. Love talking to you. So if I can help anyone think this through about your particular situation, please, happy to hear from you, and always love meeting new people. Dave, really, really, really appreciate the conversation. Great energy. I knew it was going to be like when we first met last November, and let's look. Thanks to your team for putting this on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks to them. You know what we're going to do? I want to get you in the Association Strong podcast. Guys, if you haven't heard this is a podcast I do with Tom Morrison. He's the executive director of Metal Treating Institute. Christine, I want to have you on to have this conversation as well, if you're up for that.
Great. Yeah, I love it. I love talking about this stuff. It's really important. And, associations do matters, and it matters to us. So anything we can do to help, amazing.
There's another resource. I just popped it in discussion if you're interested. Rock on, guys. Check this out.
Yeah, there it is.
All right. You guys have a great rest of the day. Thank you for joining us. Christine, thank you again very much. Thanks to Halmyre.
Again, thanks to your team at your PropFuel. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.